My name's Kanan Hurst, and I'm choosing to take a risk. So, I've had a lot of big dreams throughout my life. But I honestly have hardly any of them to actually point to and say, like, I accomplished the thing I always wanted to do. Honestly, the fear of failing at something that I always thought I'd be good at, it's been something that I was unwilling to face, at least till now. I'm asking myself, like, could I be a good filmmaker? I call myself a filmmaker, but could I be like a really good one? Could I be a good musician and producer? Is it possible to be all of those things at the same time without generative AI? Like, what does it even mean to be good? I've had a pretty strange career. Like, to me, it feels like half of a career because when I think about like a good career, I really think about consistent people who've committed themselves to really fail, and to learn by actively pursuing the vision that they've been given. I'm not just talking about folks who start companies or do something really new and epic. Really, it's like any person who's willing to put themselves out there in their work, willing to fail and grow. And honestly, I do feel really embarrassed to confess to you that I don't know if there's anything I've actually had big dreams about doing that I've given 100% of my vocational effort towards. That might sound insane to you, and it is, but it was just way more comfortable for me to get to a place on the things I was doing where I could mostly keep up with the people around me, but I would still have that safety, that excuse to say, well, I'm not very good. I haven't really thrown my weight around this. So don't judge in case I fall flat on my face. It's just so much easier for me to dream about how good something could be. And I've often lived inside that imagination of achieving something that I actually set out to do. I even find myself dreaming about how great it would be to, be the guy who just puts his head down and is willing to push to the point of failure, push past that point and do that hard work of failing in order to grow. But honestly, all my life has just felt good enough to daydream about that. And it feels really good to daydream, especially as a person with ADD. So, what are some of the dreams I've had? Well, I grew up really wanting to play trumpet in the New York City jazz scene with the legendary Wynton Marsalis. He was my favorite musician growing up. But that unfortunately ended when I quit band after my sophomore year of high school. I didn't actually want to stop playing the trumpet, but the directors in the band, they wouldn't let me stay in jazz band if I was going to quit the marching band and the concert band. My trumpet was actually stolen soon after that, so the dream died pretty quick. When I was in college, though, I was looking around the house and actually found my dad's camera that he never used. And on a wild hair, I decided to just take it out on auto settings and shoot some photos around the city of Austin. That's where I grew up. I had a lot of fun, honestly. So I was going to a music festival after that. I snuck it in. It was a blast to be able to shoot some photos of some of my favorite bands and have that access. I took the camera into the mountains in Colorado and Wyoming a few times, and I was a terrible editor. But I was learning, and through that process, I started to dream of taking images as a potential career. But I never actually really pushed myself to become better, to learn more about photography. Honestly, filmmaking sounded much more interesting. Like, I really wanted to be able to shoot video, but back then the DSLR I had actually wasn't capable of video. So once I actually got a DSLR that was able to shoot video, I started shooting. And through that process, I was way more motivated actually to jump in deeper, to learn more about how cameras worked and how to get better. Funnily enough, my very first video project, it was literally called The Dream Project. which was in essence me talking two of my best friends from working at camp into going to New York City with me for 11 days. We had hardly any money to our names. We were staying with friends. We were eating 1 to 2 meals a day. But the idea was that we would stop people on the street and ask them what their biggest dreams are, as kind of a celebration of having big dreams. I even said in the footage, wow, this might take me a whole year to put together. And here we are, 13 years later. I literally haven't edited a single frame from it. And yeah, that's a perfect example of me failing to follow through on a kind of promise I made to invest in this and to do this. But we learned a ton. We had a blast. We really learned what shooting kind of the observational documentary style was like. And I take a lot of value from that. Now, the first project I actually finished was a documentary about racism at the University of Wyoming. That's where I went to school and graduated from. This film was planned, produced, and edited start to finish in a matter of 3 weeks. But it was so impactful for me. It was amazing being able to dive into a story and chase a story and talk to people and get those real raw interviews. Visually, this film was lacking, that's for sure. But definitely the content spoke for itself. The university actually used it as mandatory faculty and staff training at the time, which was like super cool because I was graduating and I was thinking about what I was going to do with my life. And I was thinking, wow, maybe I could do this as a career. Like maybe I could tell true stories. Maybe I could tell stories in the world that made an impact. Like I could make this a career, right? Well, I moved to Denver a few months after that. And I just needed a job. So I was working as a barista. I ended up doing that for a couple of years. And I was telling everyone, I'm just doing this until I can grow my production company. Of course, the documentary dream, it kind of got put on the shelf while I try to figure out just how to be an adult, who makes enough money to survive. I know we can all relate to that. And any information online that was easily accessible was from people who had successful production companies, and they were doubling down on this is how you charge more for your work. This is how you get huge clients, bigger and bigger and better. And this is how you increase the size of your crew and grow your company and all that stuff.
And personally, in the space of 2 years, I sat from working at a desk in my parents' living room to running a full-scale production company.
And that's good, that's important stuff. And that stuff can be really cool. But I definitely had my reservations. Like, documentary was really the only reason I actually decided to jump into filmmaking. It seemed like monetizing video production, though, it was like only possible by making commercials. That's what everyone was saying. The idea of making videos, though, with the sole purpose of trying to sell people things they probably don't need was not inspiring to me at all. But I mean, the content looked beautiful and it still does. So I went with it thinking, I guess this is what a career in filmmaking looks like. And I had some good gear and I thought, okay, I guess this is what a career in filmmaking looks like for most people. The people who are making documentaries, I'll probably never even meet them. They're kind of few and far between and maybe a bit untouchable. And in the back of my mind, this dream that I'd had from growing up of being able to be a good musician, that was still brewing in the back of my mind. Like, could I actually be a good musician as well? Now, I should mention, I did meet and end up working with a documentary crew on a couple long-form documentary series from mid-2018 to 2021. And I realized that probably sounds like super dreamy and like, oh, hey man, you achieved everything you ever wanted. And certainly, honestly, it felt that way at first. We were telling great stories. We got to travel a lot around the country. We even got to travel some internationally for this work. It was super awesome. I won't go into all the details, but we just ran out of money. Money for these films, it was tight the whole time. And after the uncertainty of not knowing if there'd be a paycheck month to month, once it got to that point, I couldn't keep doing that. Unfortunately, I have no real work I can point to for that like roughly 3-year period. It would be kind of silly to keep talking very much about this. So on we go. So moving on from the documentary period, I was I was pretty unmotivated. I was super unsure of like where my career would or should go. I just had no idea what I was going to do. And it was honestly kind of depressing. During this time, I produced a video podcast about small churches and the value that they have for neighbors and neighborhoods. And I had a couple other clients to do promotional work for, but I had no rhythm. All these things were really sparse and kind of random. And I just had no direction in my life. And still, during this time, the idea of being a good enough musician to play really any genre, it sounded so exciting and cool. And at the same time, for the sake of having consistent income, I was looking for jobs as well. So I joined a video production company, which I'm honestly so grateful for. I mean, it was awesome to be able to have stability and to have rhythm in my life. But at the same time, I had also invested in online music courses, and I started practicing for the first time in my life. I was actually doing both at the same time. I was working full time for a consistent production company, and I was practicing more than I ever had before. And seeing real progress, it was awesome. But I started hitting a few musical roadblocks, and embarrassingly, I didn't even really try beyond a few times to like get over those specific hurdles. That just like has happened so often in my life. I was scared that I might somehow be close to my like theoretical ceiling of ability. Like there was no actual evidence for that because I didn't actually really try. But after all, I was asking myself, what if I couldn't actually be good? It's just much more comfortable and easier to imagine how great it would be to be proficient at these instruments, at music. So it kind of flatlined a little bit. I didn't stop playing, but I definitely wasn't pushing myself anymore. So like I said, I had this job at a video production company. I ended up leaving for a different video production company, and I left that production company just because of some projects that I really couldn't continue to support. But thankfully, about a month after I left, I accepted a part-time job as a worship pastor at a church here in Denver, which has just been a huge blessing for me because it's a beautiful community, diverse and loving and amazing, but it's also been some economic stability in this strange, kind of scary time of not knowing where the next paycheck's going to come from. So it's given me a lot of space to breathe, you know, as I like explore what does filmmaking and what does music look like in the future. I feel like one of the things I've really learned through working at the places I've worked is that it's just really hard to figure out how to do work that you consistently believe in, like work you can really throw your weight behind. I mean, we all know the biggest contracts are typically the ones that you have to face the biggest ethical dilemmas. At least for me, that's what I found. Like, it's a classic catch-22. It costs quite a bit of money to eat, to pay rent, to have insurance, you know, but the biggest video budgets, the most involved productions that are actually sustainable for long-term business growth, they're most of the time commissioned by, you know, major corporations who we all know are more likely to be the ones that have unsustainable practices in the world that might exploit their workers for low pay, for high output. They might be highly politically connected. You know, they might monopolize small businesses. Like the people doing the most good in the world in mission-based organizations, they're the least likely to be able to afford even very modest solo shooter editor projects. It's really sad. And honestly, I'd much rather though do the video for the organization that can hardly afford to cover the labor than to get paid some handsome check by a company who's actively doing harm in the world. I realize that likely I'll have to keep doing some level of commercial work, but gosh, I just really hope the amount of money I'm offered will never, ever overshadow my own values. I really honestly hope that I can find a way to have a sustainable business while telling good stories that matter, that make an impact. Yeah, AI is something I've been concerned about for quite a while. And yes, I know that we all use a certain level of AI every day without knowing it. It's typically forced on us. It's integrated in all of our Google searches now, and it's buried inside of our apps that we use all the time with terms and conditions we would never take the time to read. And I do believe generative AI is incredibly powerful. No one can deny that. Efficiency is being multiplied exponentially by this technology. And its capabilities are wild already. I mean, that's where I get worried. From the environmental impacts, which are super real already, and the potential job replacement of millions of workers, to the ability to offload creativity and bust through any creative roadblocks with just a simple prompt. Like, generative AI is something I'll steer away from as much as I possibly can. I know myself well enough to know that if I give myself the option of asking a robot to perform a task or be a thought partner in even small aspects of like a video edit or a song that I'm working on, I'll probably get addicted to that. Like that's been one of the things I've struggled with most in all my life, is just getting myself to face and go through the hardest work that any task requires to really focus and overcome those creative challenges. And if I can't overcome them, I want to have to collaborate with another human for help, not a robot. I'm sure I'll talk more about AI in different videos, but outside of the environmental impacts, I'm steering clear for 4 main reasons. 1, I just don't trust myself not to lean like so heavily on it if I start using it. 2, I believe creative work is something that makes us truly human, and I'd like to keep it that way as much as I possibly can, for myself at least. And 3, what we're seeing right now with artists' work being stolen and uploaded by someone else, and then the artists themselves being sued for copyright infringement by a distributor, even though it was their work in the first place, that's a huge mess. That's something that's hurting artists in real time. Like, we've got to figure this out. Artists' work is being stolen and weaponized against them. And then 4, the stories of otherwise healthy people who are falling in love literally with chatbots, the studies regarding the lack of brain activity, in people who use large language models like regularly versus those who don't. These are pretty terrifying to me. And I will concede, like, AI in general is a gray area. I realize there's some nuance there and it's not all bad, but I'm just saying, for these reasons I just lined out, like, I'm not going to be using it. Okay, so what is this channel actually for? For now, at least, I think it's an experiment on myself. Like, I really am genuinely curious if me, a person with serious ADD, who's pretty mediocre at the 2 things I like doing, filmmaking and music, can I, to use a corny alliteration, actually move from mediocrity to mastery? Like, I don't think I'm bad at these things, but I'm certainly not excellent at these things. Like, what does the process of getting good actually mean? I don't know, but for me right now, it has to mean just making stuff, just putting myself out there, just trying crap. I've spent so much of my life in my head imagining myself at a certain level of performance, and it's just time to see if that's actually even possible for me. It also means, just as importantly, telling good stories in the world, not just story of if I can accomplish things, but more importantly, like, what is being done in and through other people by transformation, like just doing the best work I can possibly do through filmmaking and music making. And hopefully I'll be transformed myself in the process. And that's super scary. Like, I'm doing something that, as far as I can tell, has 2 main risks among a bunch of other ones. One is finding out that maybe I'm not as good as I think I could be. And then 2, it's a fear that I will yet again fail to live up to what I'm saying to you even today that I will be doing. Like, that's a scary thing for me. But I'm committing to documenting the journey of building a business and growing in my skills of video production and music production without using generative AI to create any images or sounds in the process. Like, I guess I'm just trying to actively fight back against creative shortcuts, against fast solutions at the expense of hard work. I mean, I've done that my whole life, and I'm fighting for purposeful inefficiency. Like, in order to be as human as I possibly can in this strange generative era, I want to actually do things the slow, hard way. And if this is interesting at all to you out there, if you're even still watching, first of all, thank you, but please keep following along. We all know that the platforms need subscribers, followers, for anyone to have a successful channel at this. So if this is resonating with you in any way, or if you just want to watch a dude fail a bunch of times, like, please subscribe, like, all that stuff that everyone says to do at the end of the video. And if you have something to say, yeah, post a comment. I'll engage with you as long as it's not super mean. All right, best.